Hi everyone, we are so happy to hosting you here. I'm Lucha Papikyan from Teach for All Student Leader Advisory Council, and today we have a guest whose name is Shalini Shan from EY.
Hi everyone, my name is Shalini Shan. I am a partner in EY Parthenon, which is our strategy business, and I've been with EY for about 8 years. I'm an Australian national and I've been living in the UK for 8 or so years.
So what did you study and how did you apply and choose your first major?
Straight from high school, I decided to do a law degree because I thought at the time that I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to Sydney University, which is a great law school in Australia, and you needed to do a double degree. So it had to be law and something. So I thought, what am I going to do it with? And I decided to do law and economics. And it turns out that when I started studying it, I actually really loved the economics part of my degree. I actually then went further into economics. So I did some postgraduate study, and then I started my career as an economist as a result. So in terms of choosing what to study, I thought it would start with one thing, law, and then it ended up going in another direction.
How you choose your first career?
I actually started my career at the Central Bank of Australia, which is the Reserve Bank of Australia, which is similar to the Federal Reserve in the US or the Bank of England in the UK. And I started there as an economist. And how I actually started that job, because I would never have thought about it, was I really enjoyed a particular subject at university called monetary economics. I spoke to the professor and I said, look, I'd love to do more of this. What do I do with this subject? And then he said, look, if you really enjoy this subject, then you should think about working at the central bank or looking for a cadetship or an internship at the central bank. And so that started that whole process. I then found out that to work at the central bank, you needed to have deeper technical economics experience than I was going to get from my undergrad degree, which prompted me to do my postgraduate degree. I then did some postgraduate honours in economics. I took my law studies on hold for a year as I just focused on the economics. And then I did an internship essentially over the summer at the Reserve Bank. And that was really helpful for me to just understand what it was about. I did that for 3 months and then I finished uni and then I applied for a full-time graduate role with them as well. And that's where I worked for the first 5 or so years of my career. And I really, really loved it. When I got towards the end of that 5-year period, I just felt like doing something a little bit different and broader. I got an amazing set of skills as a graduate there, and I was like, well, look, with these skills, what if I tried to apply it to different types of problems, not just economics problems, but business problems? And that's how I moved into management consulting.
What it actually looks like, and what's your main role, what you're doing there?
So there are different types of economists. Essentially, you can think about macroeconomists and microeconomists. Macroeconomists are very much thinking about the economics of countries. And so I worked for essentially the Australian government, helping to make sure that the Australian economy was stable and under control. I took that job in 2008, which was just when the global financial crisis was starting. So it was a super interesting time. And I was in a part of the central bank called overseas economy. So my job was to kind of say, this is what's happening in the US, this is what's happening in Europe, this is going to be the impact on Australia, and therefore this is what we should be doing to interest rates. And, I loved the skills that I learned there, which were basically become, good at analysing data very quickly, become good at kind of understanding what the impacts of a change in policy might be, and then be able to explain that using words and in a written format. And then what I do now is in some ways is quite different. I'm working with businesses, not with governments. I'm working with businesses, looking at their business problems. Where do you want to be in 3 or 5 years as a business? So you might think, wow, that's totally different. But actually the core skills you're using are very similar. How you explain kind of quite difficult concepts in a simple way, either speaking to management teams or through your written work. So actually I find that whilst the jobs seem very different and the day-to-day is very different, the skills that you're using are quite similar.
So what was or what are the main challenges that you faced or now you're facing?
I think that a lot of what we think of as challenges actually turn out to be opportunities. When I was at the Reserve Bank and thinking about what else I wanted to do, and I wanted to do something broader. So I had, I was kind of like, okay, well, there's some fantastic things that I could be learning, continue to learn here. But at the same time, if I want to, say, work with businesses or work in different types of policy, then and change what I'm looking at every 4 or 5 weeks, then consulting is much better for that. So that was a really difficult period of kind of working out what I wanted to do. And the main thing I would tell myself now is there's no right or wrong. Like, I could have moved and it would have been fine. And in my head it was a much bigger choice, and I was like, okay, if this is the wrong decision, it's going to ruin my career. I'm going to throw my career away, which is like silly, because actually, one door closes, another one opens. I think of jobs as kind of stepping stones. That felt like a challenging time. The other time was that, look, I started my career in Australia, and then I moved over to the UK, and I moved over to the UK without a job. So I kind of just came over here with my suitcase and hoped for the best. And it did all work out, but that was quite a challenging time, because a lot of the skills and experience that I developed was very specific to Australia. And I had to really kind of explain to someone how applicable that was in any country or to any type of problem. And that's easy once you're in front of someone. But when you're a CV in an inbox, then you're really dependent on doors opening for you or knowing the right people. So that transition from Australia to the UK, particularly without a support network and coming over here without a job and trying to find one, whilst it worked out perfectly fine, that was quite a challenging period as well.
Okay, and how you overcome it, like how you solve and how you face that challenges?
First of all, I think I was quite, willing to stick it out. I didn't give myself a time limit. I kind of thought, okay, well, look, hard work will pay off. And secondly, I think I was very open-minded, and I wasn't kind of set in exactly what I wanted to do. And there was no coffee that I wasn't going to have. So I was very willing to meet as many people as possible.
We have many people who are watching this episode, and they would like to know what skills they required for this major and for this career.
Understanding of business and some of the basics of business strategy, finance, all of that, because fundamentally understanding that language, like even things like, now I have people in my team who have done accounting majors, and even just comfort, like understanding a business, how business makes money, reading a balance sheet, all of that is super helpful training to be able to talk to a management team. On the softer skills, I really think the number one skill that I learned from university and from my first job at the Reserve Bank was the ability to kind of understand either large amounts of data, it can be quantitative data or qualitative data, understand complex concepts and be able to explain it to someone simply. And that's something you can actually start practicing early. I remember my interview for one of my jobs very early. They asked me, it was actually, I think, at university, they asked me, can you explain what an atom means to a child? And really, it was a really difficult question. I can't remember what I said, but it was an example of, can you explain something quite complicated, but in quite simple terms? And so, starting to exercise that skill is a big part of our job, and a big part of what I help some of our junior team members with as well.
What are the job responsibilities that you have, or maybe in your career or in your company?
Helping to develop our people with the soft and hard technical skills that they need for their jobs to help them develop their own career, and also, thinking about EY and in the market, and making sure that I'm elevating and enhancing the brand.
What the key of your successful career? How you did it?
There is no one answer or one model of what looks right. I think probably the best thing is to stay fairly authentic to yourself, hard work and resilience. And what I said earlier about trying to be humble and having some humility to it. And that will be very different to a lot of other partners at a lot of other firms. And I think that's the main point, that, different people will have different strengths that they will look to, and that's what's made them a success. For me, I've tried lots of different things. I've not started a job and then gone, okay, my view, what I'd like is to get to the very top by X years. And there are some people that do that, and that has worked brilliantly for them. But I've always kind of gone, okay, well, what's, my next move? And I've always been quite open to trying new things, which has worked very well and has given me loads of opportunities. Having said that, I'm also kind of quite resilient, and I, won't easily kind of give up on something either. So that has, I always say, hard work is like 90% of it. So that for me has also been, very helpful as well. But I think the main thing is that there is no one model and there is no one path to get there.
I have many friends who have the same major and career as yours, and they work with international companies, and they're really busy. So how you balance your personal life and your career?
Again, I'm going to be really disappointing to say there's no easy, quick fixes to this. But there are things that you can put in place. That might be, for some people, having hobbies. That might be things like exercise. For me, it was a big part of it was just working out what are the things that I can control and trying to minimize the things that I couldn't control. So that might be, when I take holidays, the amount of work that I would be willing to take on during holidays, how I think about my weekends, that sort of thing.
What advice would you give to people, to students that are going into this career?
Please don't rule yourself out of an industry or out of a career because you feel like you don't necessarily fit into a mold. I think the world is increasingly open to that not being a limitation. So, I'd really encourage people, if they are interested in kind of being in a boardroom or thinking about solving a company's problems or going into public policy and, helping countries with their policy or all of that, all of those things, I'd really encourage people not to rule anything out. You don't think that you have to choose something and that's going to be it. Do what feels right for you now, and know and be open to that changing over time, and don't put too much pressure on having to choose the perfect career and then having to work up very quickly. I kind of think of careers like a playground, like there's swings and then there's another thing there and there's bars, and you can kind of try a few different things in the playground. You don't have to just go and pick one at the beginning and stick to it.
Thank you so much. This was my last question. So we are so happy that you are with us today. Thank you so much for your honest answers. Do you have something to say?
No, thank you very much. It was really lovely to meet you, Luca, as well. And I would just say to everyone that I hope it was useful, but try and listen to as many different stories as possible, because I think the main thing is that we've all got a different story to tell. There's no right or wrong way to do it.